All right, it is 1 p.m. East, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, and 11 a.m. Pacific on this Sunday. This is Twin Cities Trekkies, a podcast talking about everything from the original Star Trek all the way to Star Trek Strange New Worlds and everything in between. My name is Wes, and this is live episode number 5. We're going to be talking about the sixth episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, The Sehlat Who Ate Its Tail. This was not a Spock-centric episode, as I found out. So this is going to be a fun little interesting discussion about the episode. The the chat is now open, so please feel free to pop yourself in, say hi, and we'll discuss it. But to get in touch with Twin Cities Trekkies, it is simple. Send us an email at tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us an email with anything you'd like to say. If this episode was one of your favorites, or if you want to talk about anything else about Star Trek Strange New Worlds or anything like that, just send us an email, and I'll gladly read your email on the air. If you want to leave us a comment on social media, it's perfectly fine as well. The handle for Facebook is TC Trekkies Pod. Instagram is Twin Cities Trekkies Pod, all one word. Or you can find us out on Blue Sky. When you search out TC Trekkies there, the banner should read Twin Cities Trekkies Podcast on Blue Sky. So feel free to follow us there for anything you want to find about social media. Granted, I'm the most active on Instagram than anything else, but I'm trying to get more active on Blue Sky and other social media platforms as well. But bear with me because I'm juggling 3 different social media accounts at the same time, plus other things as well regarding this podcast, in addition to my personal life and my full-time real life job. So bear with me about with everything like that. So if the live streams audio will be an audio only version on Tuesday evening at around 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern, and 4 p.m. Pacific on the podcast feed as well. So you can find it there. If you want to leave us a comment there, that's perfectly fine. Just navigate to that episode on the podcast feed and type your comment there. It's pretty easy to do it, actually. I tested it out myself on an episode of mine, and it takes about a day for the email to be generated back to us. Since Spotify hosts the show, Spotify for podcasters hosts the show, we can definitely talk about. We can definitely. It'll probably take a day to get the comment back to us via an email. It will be generated an email back to us. Just keep in mind that any feedback that is given could be used on a future episode of the podcast. Please leave us a 5-star rating and a written review if you want to keep this going and stuff like that. Granted, I'll still keep it going, but if you want the show to be more visible, I appreciate if you'd write a 5-star rating and a written review. Well, I see no one's available yet, but hopefully as this live stream goes along, we will get somebody. But if I don't, I'm going to leave it here. I'm not going to take it down. I'm not going to guilt trip anybody, but that's okay. I'm just talking out in the void. And if it's okay, anybody wants to join, go for it. It's fine. So before we get into the episode, I want to talk about a few things regarding Twin Cities Trekkies as the podcast is moving forward into the fall and winter of 2025 and beyond. First of all, I am recording with the wonderful people, Audrey and Terry from the Voidcast this week, doing an episode celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Best of Both Worlds. I'm going to be confirming with them on tomorrow and confirming everything is set in stone. Their episode will be episode number 99. Actually, I figured out what I'm going to do for this upcoming Friday's episode of Twin Cities Trekkies. I'm going to be talking about the newest pitches that are being discussed. Talking about Legacy, talking about United, Year One, possibly the new animated pitch that former Prodigy executive producer and head writer Aaron Watke has suggested to do. So, but it's a very exciting time for Star Trek, actually, despite what's going on behind the scenes at Paramount. Now that Skydance has now fully been merged with Paramount, and the CEO David Ellison has made a lot of good things about Star Trek lately, in spite of what's going on with the Trump administration and stuff like that. Oh, I see someone joining up. Hi, hello out there. But we're going to be talking. I figured out what I'm going to do for episode 98, which will drop this Friday, August. What day is that? What day is that? 20. What day is that? 20. I forgot what day it is. The days all blend together. Sorry. Okay. So for episode 98, which will be this upcoming Friday, August 22nd, I am going to be talking about all the pitches that have been talking about lately about Star Trek. Lately, not the new, not the ones. Yes. Star Trek's having a world without DEI. Star Trek will survive because it's up to the fans. Yes. And that's a good point, Ed. Hi, Ed, by the way. Happy Sunday to you. So for episode 98, we're going to be talking about the so for episode 98, we're going to be talking about the newest pitches for Star Trek that they want to do. That includes the ones that have names to them, such as Star Trek Year One and Star Trek Legacy and Star Trek United. The one from Aaron Watke, which has recently come out, is interesting too. A new animated series. So, yes. So I'm going to talk about those on this Friday's upcoming episode of Twin Cities Trekkies. I haven't recorded it yet, but I will be recording it probably on Tuesday or Wednesday this week and releasing it on Friday. But, and then for episode 99, we're going to be, getting close to 100. We're going to get to 100. We're going to get to 100. I know we will. I'm so freaking close. That close. So this week I'm also talking with Audrey and Terry from the Voidcast, which is actually one of the newer Star Trek podcasts out there. I've heard a little bit of their show. They're fantastic people, and I reached out to them and asked them if they want to be a part of the podcast, and they said yes. So they're going to be on the show next Friday, August 29th, to talk about the 35th anniversary of The Best of Both Worlds, because it is one of the most important, certainly the biggest cliffhanger in Star Trek history, but definitely the biggest, probably one of the biggest cliffhangers in television history. So we'll be talking about that on its 30th anniversary year. Probably talking about both parts, but definitely more talking about part one, since everyone seems to remember part one more than part two. The longest summer of 1990 is going to be revisited. So, but that will be fun because they're TNG fans watching Voyager for the very first time. And I'm going to be probably coordinating with them to be on their show, hopefully within the next few months, to talk about an episode of Voyager with their show. So it's kind of like you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing. So it's kind of like that's how I've been able to be a part of other podcasts, especially with this podcasting community I've been a part of with Star Trek since 2021. It's like if you get on my show, I'll be on your show and vice versa. So, and that's what we've been doing. So that's pretty much what we're doing for the next two episodes of Star Trek of this podcast. Regular episodes will be like that. We will do live shows for the rest of the season, and we'll do one the Sunday after the season's over, probably like a week or so after the season's over, to talk about season 3 as a whole for Strange New Worlds. So that would be probably either it It would probably be not September, not it'd probably be like mid-September. But I will let you guys know about that moving forward. Regarding that. And speaking of the podcast itself, we have 9 more episodes of the Star Trek Voyager 30th anniversary celebration I want to get to. There have been 9 other people who have reached out and wants to be a part of this. So people like Jupiter Station, so people from the Star Trek Undiscovered podcast, Deep Space Love, who were also here in the Twin Cities. I found out last year, and someone like that. And I know someone else. And one of the episodes we'll be talking about. I think I figured them all out. One of them will be about the comparisons between Voyager and Prodigy. One other one will be about a celebration of the careers, Star Trek writing careers of both Jerry Taylor and Michael Piller, who are no longer with us, and do a nice tribute to them. I'm hoping I'm targeting an episode for episode 100, but if it doesn't happen that way, it doesn't happen that way. But yes, it is always great when good Trekkies come together. Yes, it is great, Ed. I like that. I mean, that's what I really like about this, doing podcasts and stuff like that. So I really do enjoy this a lot. So, and then another episode will be about the Borg, Alien Spotlight on the Borg, and a few other of the characters such as Harry Kim, the Doctor, and Neelix are part of it. And that will be a lot of fun. So that will be closing out the rest of 2025. And I think next year it's going to be a big year for Twin Cities Trekkies, not only because of Star Trek's 60th anniversary, but because of things I want to do for Star Trek for 2026. Not only talking about doing the live streams when Starfleet Academy is on and Strange New Worlds when it comes back. Yes, it is a great idea. It is a great idea. Someone's going to do that with me. I forgot who it is, but I have got them all figured out. I just got to get on the ball rolling and communicate. Yeah, Harry Kim, the Doctor, and Neelix. Yes, it's going to be busy for Trekkies, especially for this podcast, too, because not only do I want to celebrate 60 years of Star Trek, I also want to celebrate 25 years of Enterprise. And also, I'm also going to revisit the Star Trek film extravaganza because we have 3 of the films celebrate. I think it's 3. No, 4. 4 films are going to be celebrating anniversaries in 2026. That will be Star Trek 4 and 6, and then First Contact and beyond. So celebrate anniversaries because they were made around anniversaries. I mean, granted, the voyage home wasn't necessarily planned for Star Trek's 20th anniversary. It just happened to be that way. Whereas Star Trek 6 and First Contact and beyond were made to celebrate Star Trek's 30th, Star Trek's 25th, 30th, and 50th anniversaries. So it's going to be a busy year, not only for this podcast, but for everyone else who wants to be a part of Star Trek podcasting. Because, like I said, 4 films celebrating anniversaries, 25 years of Enterprise, and definitely 60 years of Star Trek. It's going to be quite a fascinating time for Twin Cities Trekkies and anybody else who does Star Trek podcasting, because it's going to be a big year. 60th anniversary, the diamond anniversary. So it's going to be a big time. So it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to 2026. Hopefully we'll be able to celebrate it without certain other things behind the scenes. But, it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this next year and a half of doing this podcast, especially. I'm going to try to get Kenzie back, too. I know she was on the show back in January talking about Voyager, but I kind of want her back for at least one more time this year and hopefully a lot more moving forward. Granted, she's a part-time co-host, and like I've said on the pod, As long as it doesn't, as long as she tells me, it doesn't tell me otherwise, she's still the co-host. So, but transitioning now until to the episode, the Sehlat who ate its tail. Well, when I first read the title of this episode, I thought this was going to be um, a Spock centric comedy episode. I really did. I honestly did because Sailats are Vulcan teddy bears, as Amanda Grayson so eloquently said in the episode Journey to Babel. So it was. I'm thankful it was not that. So I'm happy that it did not happen. Pardon me there. But so yeah, it says I definitely have a lot of plans for my figure universe in 2026. Yeah, I have a lot of plans too. I just gotta get on the ball and do it. I just gotta. It's just more of like. It's more of like want to get motivated. I want to feel motivated to do it. And if I and for those people who signed up to be a part of the Voyage celebration, I haven't forgotten you. Because yeah, this week he says this week's episode was probably my favorite episode of the season. Yeah, it was not Space Adventure Hour is so far my favorite, but this was a close second, mainly because it was. Yeah, I'm glad you thought that way too, Ed. I thought it was going to be a Vulcan episode too because Salats were, yeah, and I'm glad I was wrong. Yeah, he said I'm glad I was wrong, and I agree with him. And I was thoroughly surprised that it was not a Vulcan episode because I honestly thought it was. But granted, we had the Spock centric comedy episode already this season in the episode Wedding Bell Blues. So I honestly thought this was going to be another one of those because you, Ed, had said they are going up with the serious and down with the funny. This one, these two episodes have actually stayed steady on the dramatic. So I thought it was interesting. This episode, I mean, there was funny parts. Pelia did have a lot of fun. I mean, this one had a little bit of humor in it, but it had a lot of drama in it because what I thought was really great was that it doesn't open on the Enterprise. It opens on the Farragut with James T. Kirk, the real Kirk this time, because we have seen Kirk a lot in Strange New Worlds. However, he's only appeared 3 times as himself, not as an alternate universe version or anything of the sort. We've seen the regular Kirk 3 times. It was Lost in Translation, Subspace Rhapsody, and this one. The other ones are either from alternate timelines. So it was great to see that. Yes, a roller coaster feel for sure, but like I said to you, Ed, it's been steady on the dramatic the last couple episodes. Hopefully, it comes back down soon. Maybe with the Vulcans one in episode 8 a couple weeks from now. But yeah, I assume next week's gonna be a lighter feeling. The episode is called "What Is Starfleet," so it's gonna be interesting to see what the episode is gonna be about. Actually, I wonder if it's gonna be like a educational episode. That would be interesting to see because that's one thing that Star Trek: Strange New Worlds has done a lot. In the 3 years it's been in the 3 seasons it's been on the air, is that not only do they do serious storylines, but they're trying to change up the format. Like we had a crossover with Lower Decks in season 2. We had a musical episode in season 2. We also had we're gonna have a Muppet episode next season. So it's gonna be I think they're taking risks with the storylines and I think it's better for it because I think Star Trek needs variety. Not necessarily the dramatic every episode, not necessarily the funny every episode, but spice up the storylines. I'm looking, like I said, like I was very excited when I saw that little teaser trailer for season 4 that we all got from San Diego Comic Con back in July, with the Muppet Pike. So I thought it's going to be really fun, and I'm imagining, and I just rewatched that trailer this morning, and I'm going like, yeah, we're going to get a Muppet version of the title sequence, just like they did for Lower Decks, doing it animated, and then with the choir singing the theme song for the musical episode Subspace Rhapsody. So I think it might be a fighter feeling. I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see what the episode's gonna be about. Risk is our business. Yes, he did say that. I knew what you meant, Ed. I knew what you meant. So don't worry about it. I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. He said, "Quote, rifle is for business." Yeah, I knew you meant risk. Yeah. And that's what I really like about Strange New Worlds. They're actually taking that line literally with their storylines. And this was another experiment, I think, because what they had done with this storyline after the Farragut is damaged and Enterprise comes to rescue it, what they had done was they put Spock and Chapel and Uhura and Scotty on the Farragut, and the Pike centric characters staying on the Enterprise. Pike, Una, Pelia, Ortegas, Mitchell, and all those other characters on the Enterprise while being sucked up into this gigantic space creature, which I actually did not know this, but someone else on social media had thought of it. George, I think it's called Horg Hildebrand. Forgive me, I'm mispronouncing his name, but he made an interesting observation, and I shared it on the Instagram page, saying that there was a line from Worf in an episode of The Next Generation called "Where Silence Has Lease," in which he had mentioned because they got sucked up into that void with Nagilum, the Enterprise had, and he got a little bit spooked, and he said, "Go to an alert," and he goes, and Picard asked him why, and he goes, "My thoughts were of an ancient legend of a black space creature that was said to devour entire vessels." And then it was kind of followed up on this episode of Strange New Worlds, because Eric Ortegas had said what the Klingons had called it. So it was actually really interesting to tie in an episode from 1988 into this episode of Strange New Worlds over 30 years later, like over 35 years later. And it's like, this is really interesting. That we, yeah, like, Jorg, thank you. Jorg Hildebrand. I know I pronounced his last name right, but not his first name. But Jorg Hildebrand, I had made that observation on his social media, and I had to share his graphic for it because it's on my Instagram, on the Instagram page for the podcast, because it was a really interesting observation, and I thought this was an interesting way to tie it in to an episode of Next Gen. Even though the two events of the two episodes are separated by over a century, but in terms of the timeline of Star Trek, but these episodes aired about 37 years apart from each other. So I thought that was a really I personally thought it was a very deep cut of Star Trek canon. So I'm going to go with that observation that was a really interesting choice to what Jorg had done. And I actually I'll go with that, saying that it is one and the same. Because I like that I like that observation very, very much. So, and I really liked that because I actually liked that episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Silence Has Lease. It was actually one of my I remember the first time I ever watched it was actually when TNN aired TNG. So that was early 2000s. So I was still growing up at the time, and I remember watching the episode for the first time on TNN. So, and I actually, and I there was no benevolent space creature who was doing that, but it was a big space thing, big giant spaceship. So it was. I thought they also they didn't mention this episode. I'm surprised that Scotty hadn't mentioned it too. There have been legendary things throughout human history regarding. Don't mind this. It's actually my. If you can hear it, it's actually my cat's little robot. Just bear with me for like a minute or two. Yeah, lots of interesting mythological creatures throughout history. Um, yeah, I love a good deep cut too. I really did enjoy that deep cut, and I'm surprised that they didn't mention anything about this regarding this spaceship kind of thing. When I was thinking about it, I'm surprised that Scotty hadn't mentioned it or any of the other such characters on ship. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the old TNN aliens back in the early 2000s. Yeah. Um, that's what actually the first time I watched the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation was where Silence Has Leaves from was from TNN actually. But I'm surprised Sky didn't even compare the spaceship that swallowed the Enterprise to the Loch Ness monster. That tells me how young you are compared to me. Yeah, yeah. I was only like 11 years old when TNN started airing Next Gen. So yeah, 11 years old because it was shortly after 9/11 when they started airing TNN on TNG on TNN. So that was shortly after 9/11. But but definitely I thought I'm surprised that he didn't Sky didn't mention the Loch Ness monster or stuff like that. Granted, that's more Ireland, but I think it's more of an Ireland legend than a Scottish legend. But I'm surprised he didn't even mention it. This intergalactic Loch Ness monster. Don't worry about it, Ed. I felt the same way when I was doing my Star Trek extravaganza last year with those 5 films. I remember when I was talking with Greg, aka Captain Kirk and Cocktails, about Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. I felt old because Final Frontier came out about 6 months before I was born. So I thought it was getting old. So don't worry about it. But I really like that. Like I said, I like that observation of that. A lot of people on social media now are making observations about the debris field inside the spaceship where the Enterprise is trapped in. One of the biggest ones that everyone seems to be mentioning now is the TARDIS. Oh, yeah, man, I am old then. I'm too young then. I'm too young. Yeah. One of them is the TARDIS from Doctor Who. It's barely visible, but it's there. The other one that I've seen people observe is that there are later 23rd century birds of prey debris in the field, in the spaceship's field, in the spaceship itself. So, but oh yeah, everyone wants to talk about the TARDIS. I mean, I said before, I have never watched an episode of Doctor Who, but I know who the Doctor is. I know what he does. But I have not watched a single episode of Doctor Who. I'm aware of the franchise, though. I am aware of the franchise. It's not like I have never. I'm not completely ignorant to Doctor Who. So yeah, I have never seen Doctor Who in my life, even though I'm aware of Doctor Who. So, but definitely the TARDIS. The TARDIS made an appearance later 23rd century. Later 23rd century, birds of prey were in the debris field in where the Enterprise is being sucked dry, so to speak. And I really liked that because I thought that was an interesting way to put it in there, and um, there you go, folks. You got your Doctor Who Star Trek crossover, even though they didn't meet each other. So I did like that. It's barely visible, by the way, but it's there. People had made observations about it recently, and I'm going to make note of it that the TARDIS made an appearance, and later 23rd century Birds of Prey. But the ending, but this is the episode where Kirk gets his first taste of real command. This is definitely a lot different. I mean, granted, this is the Prime universe, not the Kelvin universe, where James C. Kirk magically ascends from cadet to captain in an hour and a half in terms of in movie time. But but definitely knowing what he knows and stuff like that, and giving the ending is definitely a shock to everybody, because we find out that this spaceship is actually an Earth vessel from the 22nd century that was destroyed by the Enterprise because they were being threatened, and it is unlike it. It ends in a tragic way than the Enterprise episode Terra Nova. I watched the episode recently. I had watched the episode probably when I was on my disability. I started watching the first season of Enterprise when I was rehabbing my arm from my bike accident. And I remember that episode very vividly in terms of how it was resolved. Unfortunately, unlike this episode of Strange New Worlds, it ends tragically. And because this is actually based off the old XCV model that was used as artwork in the motion picture, and it was reimagined by then Eagle Moss Collections for the Star Trek Starships collection. But it is very tragic what happens to these people. 7,000 humans destroyed. And, this is an episode where the lessons are learned the hard way. Sometimes when there is definitely a moral meaning and message in this episode about, yes, it was definitely heartbreaking, Ed, for sure. 7,000 human souls destroyed. Because granted, the Enterprise was threatened. They needed to do what they needed to do to defend themselves. It was an act of self-defense. However, what they didn't realize that it was an Earth vessel that was this big giant ship. So, and then we find out who they were. They were survivors of the Third World War who were concerned about a lot of things happening on the planet. It was before before the invention of the warp drive. So, according to Pelia, this was before they invented the invention of the warp drive. So, this ship left Earth to do their own version of a utopia. Yes. There was a scene at the end of the episode between Pike and Kirk about compassion and stuff like that. It's a very well acted scene between Anson Mount and Paul Wesley. And this episode actually has cemented my appreciation for what they're trying to do for Captain Kirk. I was one of those people who was very, very adamant that this was supposed to be Pike's show about a series set on board Pike's Enterprise in the years before James T. Kirk took command. This episode definitely made me rethink that thinking. I was one of those people that was going like, this is Pike's show, not a Kirk show. And I was very, very upset about it. And for a while, I wasn't like gatekeep or anything like that. If people enjoyed Paul Wesley as Kirk already, I wasn't gonna say, "Hey, you're stupid," or or something like that. I was really like one of those people that didn't like it very much, and there was that meme circling around social media that was in the style of the old pocketbooks from the day, with Anson Mount and Paul Wesley, and it said, "What are you doing on my ship?" Um, well, this episode, the Sehlat who ate its tail, has changed my mind. I think, yeah. I never looked at it as Pike's show. I always thought this was a Star Trek, and that's all I ever cared about. Yeah, I mean, we when I remember when people were clamoring for a series set aboard Pike's Enterprise. I was one of those people that was like, okay, we can do that. We can have a triumvirate again, which is one of the iconic things of the original series of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. We can do the same thing with Spock, Una, and Pike. Um, it hasn't really materialized, and that's okay now. Now that I'm understanding what's going on, but like I said, I am actually changing my mind about this whole thing, being that this is, we need a Pike centric show, a Pike centric Enterprise series. But you know, I wasn't gonna say to anybody who wanted that, I wasn't gonna say, hey, you're stupid or anything. I'm not a rage farmer. But I was just not happy. And I was like, okay, this enough is enough. No more Kirk. It was like, but this episode of Strange New Worlds definitely has changed my mind, because what they had done was separate the two crews, and now we gotten some semblance of chemistry between Kirk and the people he will eventually command, on the Farragut, and then Pike and his crew on the Enterprise. And the one thing that was really humorous about the episode was about the Pelia being so like try because when they're in this ship, the communications are down all over the ship, so including external and internal communications. So the only way she could ever do it was to have landlines. So we get to see old landlines from the 80s. That was a nice little touch. It was a um, nice little tribute to the old style phones from the 80s and whatnot. So I really did enjoy that part a lot, but the rest of the episode was very, very strong. This was actually, I think this is the second best episode I've seen so far this season of Strange New Worlds. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite, but it's nearly the top of the episode list this season that have been really strong. Um, this episode is slightly below a Space Adventure Hour in terms of what I enjoy watching, but this was an episode that I really did enjoy a lot. Um, and I'm glad I was proven wrong, in terms, because I really thought this was going to be a Spock centric episode of Strange New Worlds, being funny, comedy, and stuff like that, because Sehlats were teddy bears and stuff like that. It was based off a line from what Spock had said. It's pretty much like, the Sehlat has its tail, Captain. That's pretty much what it was. But it was not what I expected. Yeah. He said, "You're young and might not know this, but landlines were an inspired idea. Landlines never required electricity to work, and since the Enterprise was low on power, it was a great idea." Yeah. I mean, in the 90s, we still had landlines. So when I was growing up as a kid, I still had landlines. But after about 2003, when we had, like, to me, I know the cell phones were invented and the cell phones were around, but not nearly as prevalent as it was when I was a teenager. I mean, with the flip phones and stuff like that. My first cell phone was a flip phone, um, and now I have and now this was 2005, so like 20 years later. Yeah, I think I do remember that. I remember a few bad storms when we still can talk to each other on the phone. So yeah, they could work without power. Yeah, I think I do remember a few bad storms growing up where we still could talk to each other even though we had no power in the house. So I do remember that. So yeah, but it was a nice little touch though. Because the observation from Doctor Mbenga was that she has a lot of Peoria had a lot of junk, um, and that was interesting. That was a funny little line there, but it was funny nevertheless. And she goes like, oh, I haven't had these since the 1980s where I was a roadie for the Grateful Dead. That was interesting too. I'm not a heavy metal music fan, but that was an interesting touch too. I really did enjoy that very much. All these tie-ins to old stuff, and it was nice. And not only that, did you notice that the? Oh yeah, Peely reminds me of my dad and my father in the best way. Yeah, yeah. I'm still out on the fact that she's gonna drive Sky to drink. Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you for clarifying that, Ed. He said the Grateful Dead was not a heavy metal band. The Grateful Dead was a pot smoking hippie band. Thanks for clarifying, because I thought it was heavy metal. But thank you for clarifying that for me, because I know who the Grateful Dead are. I just wasn't sure what style of music they were. So thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that very much, Ed. So, okay, so I really enjoyed the Sehlat. I'm going to wrap things up now because I'm going to wrap it up at the 45-minute mark. So, so the episode is very great, very strong. Lessons are learned the hard way, unfortunately. And I give this episode a 5 out of 5 because of the fact it's a very message-laden episode, learning about compassion and stuff like that for other ones, and learning about trial by fire under command, because pretty much Kirk's thrown into the fire regarding commanding the starship for the first time. So, and that's going to be interesting to see what happens as we get closer to the end of Strange New Worlds and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what will happen, especially like that. So, this is going to be this is an episode that should be seen and watched now. I know that some people have said some other things that necessarily don't need to be said, but about it. But this was an episode about empathy and definitely a lot of things, or a lot of good things about it. So 5 out of 5, best episode. Like I said, it's not in the top for me. Space Adventure Hour is slightly above this episode, but yeah, there's no room for you on this bridge. No, there isn't. Nope. As Captain Kirk said, leave your bigotry in your quarters. There's no room for it on the bridge. So yeah, there was some other things that I've seen lately about this, and about this episode that someone compared it what those people were to Trump supporters, and someone said, "Oh, you don't have to be political and stuff like that." Well, Star Trek's always been political and woke and all those good things. So, but that's beside the fact. So, let's wrap it up now. So, next week, I didn't think about that. The Rivers from Firefly. I did not think of that. Interesting. So yeah. Thanks, Ed. So let's wrap things up. So next Sunday, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. Excuse me. We'll be talking about what is Starfleet, which is the next episode of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Episode 98. We'll be talking about the new pitches for Star Trek shows, and then the following week, episode 99. The regular show will be the people from Voidcast talking about the best of both worlds. So until Friday, if you want to listen to it on Friday, or if you want to join me on Sunday, that's perfectly fine as well. Either one works. Take care and live long and prosper, everybody.